So one of my most important tools in my food reset craving alchemy program is ketosis. And this is a state that your body uses for fat burning, right? We put on our fat for a reason, and it's specifically to get us through lean times. Nowadays, we don't have a lot of lean times, so we actually have to create a scenario where our body can start using that fat. So our body's developed this amazing system where it can use either carbohydrate as glucose for fuel, or it can use ketones from fat for fuel. And this was a beautiful system when we had periods of time of seasonal abundance and scarcity, right? So we would put on weight during the abundance, and nowadays it always looks like abundance, and then we would use that fat for energy to get us through leaner times. So using ketosis is this beautiful habit bringing us back to that seasonal pattern that our bodies are used to, right? So to burn through some of those fat stores, we turn, and the way to do that is to limit the carbohydrate for a period of time. So it takes about 2 to 7 days to enter into ketosis. And that is your body using fat, using these ketones. It breaks the fat into smaller pieces called ketones. And the brain actually uses that for fuel perfectly fine. It loves that fuel. The switch going from glucose to fat is a little bit clunky, so that is a little bit rough. Around day 3, you might be like, ooh, my brain is like a little bit hangry. And you can solve that by taking some C8-MCT oil. But once we are through in the state of ketosis, what you will feel is more energy and lightness, and the brain, you'll like all that brain fog goes away. You actually think more clearly. Research is showing that there's enormous metabolic benefits, inflammatory benefits, physical benefits, brain benefits. So this is not a state to be avoided. This is actually a state to get in the practice of accessing, right? To burn through some fat, to bring down that inflammation so you have more joint comfort, less stiffness, more energy. To start to lower that insulin response is going to train your cells to be a little bit more sensitive to insulin. So research study, I wanted to show you this study, up to 2 years, individuals with type 2 diabetes staying in ketosis reversed their metabolic, inflammatory, and dysbiosis biomarkers, and people who had diabetes reversal in over 50% of the cases, complete remission in 8%, right? So there's nothing harmful. This is only beneficial. That's what I'm telling you. People have clearer brains, they have more energy, and this is what I want for you. Less pain, right? So I get pain in my joints when I eat foods that have this inflammatory. And when you have inflammation in our brain, that leads us to irritability, anxiety, depression. So when we take that inflammation away, all that goes away, right? We feel better. Our moods are nice and stable. Our body moves with more ease. It also helps to stabilize your hormones, and you'll start burning through some of that fat, which is what a lot of us are looking for. Am I right? On the other hand, right, as you stabilize the inflammation and the blood sugar, what you'll find is more stable moods, right? Sharper brain. You'll feel less hungry because you are actually turning to that fat, and your body's like, oh, okay, we have plenty. Now, at the same time, I don't want you to deprive yourself, right? Eating plenty of protein and fat, lots of vegetable variety. That's all really important because that tells your body, hey, we're in a lean time, like burn the fat. But we're not in such a lean time that you need to crank down your metabolism because, we've got to conserve. So that's the sweet spot that you want to be in. And you want to really emphasize vegetable variety. And the reason is because you want to maximize the diversity of your microbiome. So the microbiome are all those bacteria in your gut. And the more different kinds of gut bacteria you have, the more resilient to stress you are. When we look at the tribal people of Hazda, they eat an enormous variety of vegetables, and as such, they have an enormous variety in their gut microbiome. So the American diet has roughly 12 vegetables, and as such, we have quite limited microbiome. So I want you to really emphasize vegetable variety because we're not trying to take away anything. We're trying to add, right? I want you to have more energy, sharper brain, to bring your inflammation down, to have more variety in your diet, right? What is bad about this? Everything is even better. It's this clean eating phase that lets us reset our habits, right? It reminds us we're here in the lean times, right? We reconnect with nature. We emphasize a simple diet, the protein, the vegetables, the fat, right? Our body says, oh, it's a quiet time. We by giving some mindfulness to our eating process, we remember ourselves, we remember our food, we remember the connection that nature between we remember the connection between our food and ourselves and nature, right? The food came from nature, and nature in turn then nourishes us. And it's this connection that brings the whole process full circle, right? It's not about limiting carbs and, whatever that does for our body. It's about remembering the history, the cycle that our bodies were meant to be, remembering our feelings of hunger and fullness, and remembering that food comes from the earth and is that connection to the earth within us. That's what brings us the transformation, right? That's what brings us all the new habits, the food reset. So what does the diet look like? And it's right here. Like basically you're going to have half your plate protein, half your plate vegetables. You're aiming for in a day 50 grams of carbohydrate. That's right at the upper end, but that's the amount that will help build your hormones and that will allow for all that vegetable variety that it will nurture your microbiome. So that's a sweet spot. The goal here is to not restrict your diet so hard that when you come off of it, you're like, woohoo, I can eat whatever I want, right? Because that's not good for anyone. That's yo-yo dieting. What I want you to do is to find this beautiful pattern of cyclical going into the lean times, coming out of the lean time, and to remove all those emotional charges around food that make your brain light up, right? And when we want to take that emotional charge down, we want food to just be food. That means not tracking, right? Because tracking kind of makes us more obsessed with food. That's not dieting, which again, when I take something away, you're like, ooh, wait, right? When I tell you not to think of an elephant, the first thing you do is think of an elephant. So when I say, okay, we're going to diet, I'm going to take away food, you're like immediately then start obsessing about food, right? So instead, we're going to do this seasonal, cyclical lean time and feast time. Now, feast being just seasonal abundance, okay? Not an actual literal nonstop feast, but that there are periods of more abundance and less abundance. So when you're coming out so you can stay into ketosis up to 2 years. Research has shown no adverse effects. And you can stay probably longer than that because that was just the length of the trial. But our bodies aren't necessarily designed to be in the lean time for indefinitely. We are meant to have this cycle, right? And when you stay in ketosis for too long, I think that's a habit of restriction that will eventually trigger you to binge. So more having these cycles, burning your fat, then putting on a little bit more, back and forth, right? That's how our bodies were designed. Everything is a cycle, right? A monthly cycle, this food eating cycle, the seasonal cycle. So it's bringing your body back into the rhythm that it knows. So what does that mean in terms of cycling? You would stay on this program for 3 weeks if you're just looking to do some healing and you're doing more of a monthly cycle. But if you're trying to lose weight, you'd stay on for 3 to 6 months. You could stay on for as much as 12 months, but your body will kind of tell you when it's time to come off. You'll start having some like kind of lusting for food. Now we're going to work on that, right? You want to take the emotional charge of food off. And also right before a big weight drop, you'll feel like your body will kind of call for food. So you're looking both at how your body feels, but also staying within those time guardrails. So 3 to 6 months if you're trying to lose weight, or even up to 12 months, you can stay in ketosis. And then when you come off, what you want to do is do that slowly. So add foods back one at a time, one food at a time for 3 days, savor it, make sure there's some mindfulness around it, and then watch how your body feels, right? So see if there's any physical symptoms, are there any emotional symptoms. When I put white rice back in, I'm like insatiable. I like eat it all, and then I'm like, maybe I could just make more. And brown rice doesn't do that, right? So watch for things like that. Or gluten makes my joints hurt, so my wrists and ankles hurt. When I first put gluten back in my 20s, I've had this gluten sensitivity for a long time. When I first discovered it in my 20s, I got like this bone tired exhaustion when I put it back in. And now that I'm older, it's progressed. And so it started with like mild joint pain, and now it's joint pain for like 5 days that is so bad I can't sleep. So that no food is worth that. You'll probably know if you have something quite like that. But like that first time when I put it in and it was just exhaustion, right? I probably had been living at this low level of fatigue and not realizing it was related to something I ate, right? Because we introduce food into our bodies all the time and we think, oh, calorie is calorie, it's all fine. No, that food is so much more than calories. It's all of the nutrients. It tells about the place where it grew, right? There's so much information in a food. It tells your body, hey, are we in a lean time or an abundant time? You know, how nutritious is that food? Because your body will recognize low nutritious food as a lean time, not to the point where it's going to put you in ketosis, but it will start sort of holding on to your metabolism, right? It'll light up your brain. We need more food, right? Because we need more, because this wasn't satisfying. Does that sound familiar? And so then after you've done the reintroductions and you've gotten those learnings, you will better be able to stay within the guardrails of what diet works for you. You'll know how different foods feel in your body, and then you can have more of an abundance period. So depending if you're just doing the monthly, you would do an abundance period for 10 days, and then you'd go back in, and that's a seasonal pattern of ketosis for cellular healing. But if you're doing it for weight loss, you'll stay in that abundance pattern for a few months and introduce carbs just every other day, right? Because you want to have a longer period, but without that emotional charge. And then when your pants get tight or you start feeling like your cravings have spiraled and you're not really able to control them anymore, go right back into that clean eating phase, that reset your habits. So another question people have, like, do I need test strips? No. What I want you, so generally you want to do a little bit of tracking for a couple weeks just to better understand what contains carbohydrate. I love the app Carb Manager. And then no more tracking, because the whole point is to not have you obsessed with food, right? I don't want you thinking about food all the time. We just want to be in a period of abundance or a little bit leaner time. We don't need to worry about test strips. I don't care if how rigid and regimented you are in ketosis. What we want is that lower carbohydrate state and turning to fat burning. So you don't have to worry too much. I also don't want you eating a lot of cream cheese and bacon, like some of the keto cookbooks out there, right? Those aren't what your cavemen ate, and they certainly weren't testing their keto strips either. So you'll want to keep your carbohydrates low. It will be that day 3 will be a little bit rocky, and then you're through. Everything is easier. Your brain fog lifts. You feel better. So it really is just that one day, and you're going to feel like, I can't do this. This is too hard. I promise. Day 3 is hard. Then you're through it, and then everything gets amazing. You have so much more energy. Your inflammation goes away. So you can totally do this.